So as we get started with the food styling section of this course, we first need to introduce the most basic concept of styling, which is that you cannot take pretty pictures of ugly food. The camera is only going to see what's on the plate. So I can't tell you how many times I've made the mistake of thinking that I just have to pay attention to the lighting and the setup and make sure I cook some delicious food and then just throw it on the plate. And as long as I take some good pictures at the right angles, that'll gloss over everything else. But that's absolutely never the case. At best, the camera is only going to see a fraction of how beautiful the plate looks in real life. It's never ever going to look better than it looks in person. So it's important to take the time before you ever pick up the camera to make sure that your plate looks appealing and presentable and photogenic. And we're also going to look in this lesson at why you want to style your pictures. There's some more obvious reasons of what styling can do for you, so we'll take a look at that. And to drive the point home, we'll look at a few examples of my own work where I didn't take the time to style and I just snapped a few pictures, versus what happens if I recreated the same dish with a more intentional focus on styling. And finally, it's important to remember that even though I say pretty pictures of ugly food, pretty doesn't just mean neat and orderly. As you can see with the potato gnocchi over here on the side with the pumpkin Alfredo sauce, that's not very neat, but it still looks appealing and it looks pretty and it looks artistic, and that's what I was going for. So don't get into the mindset that you have to pull out the ruler and organize every blueberry. That's almost never what you want to do. It just means that you have to intentionally focus on making it look stylistic and appealing in the ways that you're looking for. So we'll start out by looking at the most obvious question of why do you want to style your food? And there's a number of pretty primary reasons. And the first one is that styling your food helps you take better pictures. Since the food is obviously the focal point of food photography, it makes sense to make sure that the food looks as appealing and photogenic as possible. Because again, it's never going to look better through the lens of the camera than it does in real life. So if your food doesn't look really good to you as you're setting up the scene, take some more time to make it look better. And in a related way, it helps you save time because you don't have to get a million shots. You don't have to set up the lighting just perfect, because if the food is pretty, it'll gloss over all of the errors. And that's the third point, is that no one pays attention to the teapot in the back of this picture. No one says, oh, there's too much reflection on the side of it, because they're busy looking at the beautiful mint leaf that stands out, or the coconut whipped cream and the chocolate shavings. So if you take the time to style your food, it'll hide some of the other flaws and anything else you don't get perfect. And finally, styling helps you tell an intentional story. Remember, food photography is all about the art of storytelling, and it's the food itself, obviously, that gives you the most flexibility in what kind of a story you want to tell. So the way you style it can adjust the story you want to tell, and that's a powerful tool to have. Before we go any further in styling, I want to reiterate what I've already said a few times, which is that the camera only sees what's on the plate. So no matter how nice your camera is, it's not going to take a picture of something that doesn't exist. So if your food doesn't look pretty to you as you're putting it together, it's not going to look good through the camera, and that's just the basic principle of photography. At best, it's only going to look close to as good as it does in real life. So definitely take the time to make sure your pictures are beautiful. And I want to show you a few examples, some case studies of my own where I didn't style the food, I just snapped some pictures, and then what happened after I took the time to actually style them. So in this first example, this is, you might not be able to tell, but it's absolutely delicious. It's one of my favorite meals. I make it several times a week, and it is chocolate peanut butter cup oatmeal. So I took this picture before I ever started my blog. It was several months before I started blogging. I just shared it on Twitter with my followers, and I didn't give a thought to how the food looked or how it was styled or what the background was. I just took the picture. But after I started my blog, and I knew I obviously needed to do a better job, I took the time to recreate this dish. I styled it appropriately with the right plating and the right accents, and look at what a dramatic transformation it is. So you'll notice that there's a few things that are really different. And part of them are the background, it's on a wooden surface, and there's better lighting. And those are topics we'll talk about later. But as far as focusing on the food itself, notice how it's in a much better dish that really brings out the color of the oatmeal and makes it be presentable right there in your face. It also has a peanut butter covered banana on top. It's centered correctly in the dish, and it's kind of got a little bit of texture to it. There's a piece of chocolate in the front. So overall, the way the food is styled is dramatically better. The taste is almost similar, but your readers can't taste it. So part of your job is to explain what it tastes like by the way it's styled, and that's something you pick up as you go along. In another example, this is something I did this week, and I thought I would have some fun with it because I knew I would be talking about styling. So I wanted to give you a dramatic example. If you just throw some pancakes on a plate and take a picture, it doesn't look so bad. There's pancakes, we got the scene set up, it's got nice lighting and pretty white background. But I took this picture, I left the camera in virtually the same place with the same lighting. Then I set up the pancakes in a more desirable and photogenic approach. I added some blueberries, and look at what we get. So you notice that everything else in this picture is virtually identical except for the way the food is styled. And obviously, one of those pictures makes you feel a little more hungry, and it makes you feel more connected to the food than the other, and it's not hard to tell which one that is. In the final example, take a look at this pumpkin spice waffle that I made a few months ago. And this picture actually makes me laugh because it doesn't look so bad as far as the setup and the accents and the lighting, which we'll all talk about later. But if you look at the waffle itself, it's just kind of sitting there in the middle. It's not very balanced. It has little pieces sticking off the edges, and most obviously, I actually messed up making the waffle, where you can see in the middle, there's a missing row of little square holes that should be there, but I flipped it in the wrong way, and I didn't even notice this. I just took the pictures and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll take some pictures of this waffle, and it didn't come out so well. But when I remade the waffle, I styled it on the plate correctly, I made sure it was even and centered. I cut out a piece, added some styling around the plate, and look at what we get. So see how much different this is. We have the maple cashew sauce around the edges, a piece of it's cut out to be a little more dramatic. It's got the maple cashew sauce on top, and it looks so much more tasty and delicious than the one on the left, even though in my mind, I know they both taste identical because I tasted both of them. But again, your viewers cannot taste the food, so you've got to really focus on just the visual aspects of it, and a big part of that is the way you style your food. So as I've said, pretty doesn't always mean neat. You have to have pretty food, but that rarely, if ever, means that you want it to be so centered and organized that it almost looks structured. Like in this picture from Bon Appetit, these are blueberry hand pies, and they look so natural and messy, and you just want to grab one out of the screen and take a bite out of it because it looks so appealing. And while this looks natural, I'm sure someone spent a very long time styling this perfectly so that it looks natural. And that's one of the biggest parts of your job as a stylist, is to set up the picture so that they look as natural as possible, but they're telling the intentional story you want them to tell. And that's really just something you got to practice over time. So again, I just mentioned this in that last picture. They accomplished the goal of styling with those blueberry hand pies, which is that you want your readers to say, I want to grab it out of the screen and take a bite. If you can make your audience feel that feeling, if you can make them hungry, if you can make them almost taste the food just by looking at it, you have accomplished 100% of your goal as a food photographer. So that's the real key here, is make your audience hungry. Find a way to get them to almost taste the food through the screen, and you're so far ahead of the game that nothing else really even matters. For your homework in this lesson, I really just want you to get in the habit of thinking like a stylist. So find a source where you know you're going to get good pictures of food, whether it be a Bon Appetit magazine or the Bon Appetit website or a Food Network magazine, or something where you're going to find high quality publications of food pictures, and just start browsing through it. And when you find a photo that's like, ooh, this looks really good, take a minute to take the two-dimensional picture, expand it out in your mind and try to think about how the stylist approached this subject. Think of it from every angle. Think about how they stood over this picture and why the chive is on top of the potato or why the blueberry is spread across the plate. So think about what they did on purpose to make it look as delicious and natural as possible, because as you become a food stylist, it'll be helpful to see what other people have done. So just try to get your mind wrapped around this concept. And this quick video was really just to convince you, and I hope I've done that you need to style your food before you can ever take a good picture of it. So until the next lesson, when we talk about how to choose the right dish, have some fun, look at a bunch of pictures, try not to get hungry, and